and welcome to the third episode of Record Review. This week we're reviewing Geordie Greep's The New Sound, which came to me on a pre-order just a couple of days ago, and I've been very, very excited for this to come out for the last few months. I pre-ordered it on the 22nd of August, and it came on the 4th of October. I've been a big Black Midi fan since kind of 2019. They were just amazing, and they just got better with every album. And it was very sad to see that Black Midi broke up. But we have a marvellous album such as this, and also Cameron Picton's efforts, and I'm sure there's going to be more and more in the future. But yeah, this is a fantastic album, and I'll get straight into it. The cover's quite interesting, the whole theme of the album kind of revolves around desperate men and unhealthy relationships that the characters Geordie plays. And I guess this kind of portrays that sort of idea that she's only kissing him for his money or whatever. I guess it can be symbolic of the draining of his life. It's quite interesting. The gatefold opens up here. Quite nice to see that. Always love it when there's a proper gatefold that you can open to reveal the full art. The track list is there. We have the tracks Blues, Terror, Holy Holy, The New Sound, Walk Up, Through a Wall, Bongo Season, Motorbike, As If Waltz, The Magician, If You Were But a Dream, and that's the album. It's produced by Seth Shank Evans, who was originally on Black Midi's tour lineup, I believe, and it's co-produced by Geordie Greep. And then there's all the rest of the credits here, and it's a Rough Trade record. On the inside of the gatefold, it's not that exciting. We just have the lyrics, which I think the lyric is always useful to have. It's always fun to be able to actually read along while the songs are playing. Although I do think it could have perhaps had a little bit more decoration here than just white with black text. Unfortunately, I didn't receive the bonus 7-inch, although I am looking into getting it, so if I do, I'll probably make a 0.5 to this episode. So stay tuned for that if that happens. But yeah, overall this album is really fantastic, really something. It's definitely the same writer as the Geordie Greep Black Midi songs. You can definitely tell the same styles there. However, it's definitely more influenced by jazz, which has kind of been coming on with Cavalcade and then Hellfire. They were both more and more sort of influenced by jazz elements. This seems to be quite influenced by, I think, particularly Afro-Cuban jazz and Latin American music, which is quite interesting. It's got some really interesting sounds. It never gets quite as rough and as intense as Black Midi ever got, and it doesn't quite have the same rough, just complete switch in the music, but it does have the vibe still, and even though it tends to be more chilled out, which I tend to like more anyway, I do think that it does still retain a lot of the energy and spirit of that Black Midi managed to create. And it's really, really awesome. Pulling out the first disc, we have, on the back, it's just a plain. We can see the label there, which is quite good. And we have this chimp's foot. I'm not sure exactly why we get this. There's definitely mentions of chimps in the lyrics. I think it's a chimp. It could be just any ape. And there's definitely more merchandise of Geordie Greep that has chimps on it, so it's possibly more of a artist thing. And on the other sleeve, we have something more interesting, I think, which is Geordie and Seth Shank Evans together, which makes me think that perhaps this is more of a collaboration than I originally thought, and perhaps Seth Shank and Geordie Greep are coming sort of a duo, which is quite interesting. And then we have a blue label on that side. There is also an alternate album cover, which is green, and I did consider getting that, but I do prefer the yellow one. Really good album. I suppose I'll get into the songs. So first off, we have the song Blues. Blues is it's definitely one of the more Black Midi feeling songs. It's got that sort of their first album definitely had a sort of rhythmic feeling where it'd be the same rhythm pounding, pounding, and pounding, and it'd be quite intense, and it would get more and more over time, and it'd be almost like a tribal, like bum, 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 or whatever the song was. Quite interesting. That does feel like it has that sort of thing with the very simple repeating riff. The instrumentation is very different, and the way he sings it is very different. It's a lot more chilled out, and it's quite interesting because that one does have Morgan Simpson drumming, who was the drummer of Black Midi. That's quite interesting to see. He's on a few other songs, and it's quite interesting to see that this album contains 2/3 of Black Midi on a portion of the songs. It does happen with quite a lot of bands. Happened with the Beatles, with Japan. They split up, and then it's like, oh, who do we call for the drums? Ringo. Quite an interesting song. Not my favourite, but it's quite good.
You imagine a roaming camera that captures your melancholy. You walk the streets that stink of disease. You turn up your colour like James Dean.
Terror is fantastic. That's one of the best songs on the album. Really love the horns on it. It's a really chilled out song. Really reminds me of 27 Questions, the bit in the middle where he's actually saying the 27 questions or asking them. I love that. That's my favourite Black Midi song. So I think this is really awesome. Terror. I understand why it's so many people's favourites on the album.
Just for a second, just for a moment, just for a minute more, tell me.
Holy Holy. I have most experience with it because I listened to the single like 20 times. That one's really good. That one also has a bit of a more Black Midi feel to it. With the sort of repeating riff and the going into a more chilled out part and a cooler part. But it's such a different instrumentation, such a different style with the sort of Afro-Cuban / Latin American sound. It just has a much more chilled out, much layered almost sound. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it. It's very lush, whereas Black Midi sound was also very layered, but it tends to be quite harsh and oppressive, which is also good in a different way.
Arrive at around 7 p.m. I want you to get there no later than 10. I want you to be dressed like a sophisticated tart with too much makeup on. Will that be alright?
Then we have the new sound, which is an instrumental track, it's a very fun track. It's definitely not a favourite, but I mean it's still really, really good. I still really, really enjoy it. It's quite fun, and I think it's quite bouncy. It almost feels like a theme for a montage in a film. It's interesting to see instrumental tracks because that wasn't really a thing that Black Midi really did before, and I know there's definitely more of that sort of thing live, which I'm going to be seeing Geordie Greep live this month, and I'm very excited. So I might again make a thing commenting on that, but who knows? I'm very excited with that though, and especially after listening to this, I'm very excited to actually go and see him live. Walk Up is quite an interesting song. That's much more of a intense song, I think. Much more of a sort of beat. It's more noisy.
She may as well say, as I walk up for love on your lunch break.
It's got a very interesting outro, very Zapper-ish maybe, is a good way to describe it. I think Zapper's probably the best way to go with it, but it's also kind of like a lot of 90s hip-hop songs with strange skits and stuff at the end that I think it's quite an interesting thing. Kind of goes into a sort of bluesgrassy folk-ish song.
They ain't got no town, they ain't got no friends, they ain't got a frown.
Through a War is really good. It's one of my favourites. I don't think it is my favourite. It's kind of that's a really difficult one to say, which is my favourite. Through a War is definitely one of the stronger songs for me personally. I love, really builds up and kind of gets more and more exciting, and that's a song I really love. Quite interesting because that one is one of the 2 tracks credited to both Geordie Greep and Seth Shank Evans, the other one being Motorbike, which I will discuss in a second. But yeah, for what I really, really enjoy. I think it has a really lovely build-up, and I just really love the sound of it, and really think it's amazing.
Have you tasted human flesh? Have you had sex with the dead? Have you seen a brain split in two? Do you know what courage looks like? Have you seen a woman give birth to a goat?
Bongo Season is probably the weakest song on the album. That doesn't mean it's bad. That just means that the other songs are, like, really good. It's definitely a lot more simple, and I don't think I'd ever find myself thinking specifically to pick it up, but it's very, very nice on the album. It fits quite nicely, and I'm not complaining that it's there, because it is quite good. The shortest one, it's only 2 minutes, I think, which is a lot shorter than the rest of the songs of the album. Magician, I think, it's 12 at least on the digital version, but I've heard that they're longer on the vinyl version, but I haven't heard the digital version yet, so I couldn't compare them, which maybe I should have done before this, but I've been kind of more so listening to to this the past few days. I think I've listened to it 3 or 4 times now, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind, my first impressions, but it's not, I've kind of developed more of a feeling, so I feel like I can explain it a bit better.
Bongo season is sweeping the globe. Bongo season.
Motorbike is a lot of people's favourite, actually, on the album. It's interesting because it's sung by Seth Shank Evans, who has much more of a deep baritone, sort of rich voice compared to Geordie, who has almost a weird nasally voice, which surprisingly works quite well, and I do like his voice. I did prefer Cameron Picton's a lot of the time, but it works very well for the songs he writes, which I guess is kind of the same for a lot of artists. Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits, he would never say, oh, he's the best vocalist of all time, but his voice really works for the songs he writes. But yeah, Motorbike's pretty good. It's quite noisy, it's quite different. It does have a very different vibe. But I'm quite interested to see how Shank grows as an artist, and if he's going to release a solo album, or if he's going to continue with Geordie. Or it's not one of my favourites, though. Maybe it needs to grow on me a bit more before that. Maybe it will be my favourite. Very different, but quite. It still has the same. It still fits on the album. It was quite a surprise when I heard them singing. I was like, "Who the hell is that?" But it was really quite interesting.
Voices call and reach me out across the ridge. They shout thief, thief, and you led them up, and your torch lit up the square. Well, I've done it now.
But I think that's when it switches to the second LP. The first LP has Blues, Terror, and Holy Holy, 3 songs. That's the first side. The second side has The New Sound, Walk Up, Through a War, and Bongo Season, 4 songs. And then the best 4 songs, there's 2 on each side of the last LP, the second LP, and they're really good. It feels very much like Songs in the Key of Life in that way, where with each song it gets better somehow, and it's like, whoa, it's like a whole double album, and every song is just, there's no filler really. It's like every song is almost improving on the last. Really, really insane. But you do wonder how long he was working on this material, because I mean, The Magician was when he was kind of formed when he was still with Black Midi, and Black Midi kind of haven't. I think they went on hiatus in about 2022, maybe early 23. So he's definitely had like a couple years to figure out a lot of this music, which I think has really worked out, because he's really managed to perfect it, which is fantastic. As If Waltz, I love that song. That's possibly my favourite. Possibly. We haven't talked about Magician yet. It is a waltz song. It's in waltz time. It's really quite beautiful. It does have some bits where it gets more, and it builds, and it does build over the course of the song, and it's brilliant. And the lyrics are weirdly touching. They do feel quite tender. It's about, like I said at the start, it's about him meeting up with a prostitute, and he's saying how he wishes he could know the prostitute outside of his meeting, and He wishes he could see them without makeup. He wishes he could see them naked and not have sex with them. He wishes to go out on dates with her and like have all the tenderness with it. And it was like it's such a strange thing, but it really was quite a touching lyric, I think, for what it was. Even though it's still skewed and it's supposed to be very it's supposed to be quite unhealthy. It was quite nice. And I think he probably let that out from maybe some of his own experiences. I do imagine a lot of this album he's getting at is a lot of his own frustrations.
You to tell the world I need you, to never tell your secret, to never tell your secret, to pretend I've more to say to you than how much.
The Magician is a fantastic song. Really, really something special. It's the centerpiece of the album, really. Really, really amazing. But yeah, it starts off very, very simple, very, very calm, and then it builds and builds and builds and builds, and the vocal take is incredible. The instrumentation's incredible. At the end, it's so noisy and crazy, just like any Black Midi song. How at the end that just goes mental. And it's just a cacophony of noise. It's kind of the same thing with this at the very end. But it has all this beautiful build-up, and it's kind of like Ascending Forth as well, actually. Really, really gorgeous, a really amazing song. That's kind of like the obvious favourite to have. So that also could be my favourite.
Left of the lover who doesn't exist, who knows not how many fantasies involve her kiss. What's left of the dreamer who dreams and dreams and dreams and dreams and dreams, thinks he isn't dreaming, thinks he is free.
And then the last song is If You Are But a Dream, and I believe that is it's not written by Geordie or Shank, but it's written by Mo Jaff, Jack Fulton, and Nat Bronx, and I'm not sure those are members of his band, or I'm guessing it's probably some sort of a standard or something, because I don't think they're members of his band, but I could be wrong, because I'm not an expert on that. It's a very nice song. It's a brilliant closer. It really brings the mood back down, calm. It's a lot like Goodnight off the Beatles' White Album, directly after Revolution 9. It's like this wild, crazy song that's super intense, and then it just calms it back down, really brings it more mellow, and then it closes out the album very sweetly. Even though it's not as amazing as a lot of the other songs, it's a really brilliant way to close out an album. I think it's time to process the rest of the album as well, and it's really cool, really cool.
It's more than I could bear to find that I'm forsaken.
Now, closing thoughts on the album. It's brilliant. I'm not sure if I like it as much as Hellfire. I think it's definitely better. It's way better than Schlagenheim, and I think it's better than Cavalcade by a bit. But Hellfire is really something special, and it's possible that I just feel that way because I've listened to Hellfire so much, and I love that album, and this one will just need to grow on me a bit more, and I'll appreciate it more. Right now, I think it's definitely up there, though. It's still amazing. It's the best album. It's the best music I've heard in quite a long time. Best new music. That's just a taste thing, of course. Like, if you prefer other music, that's totally fine. But it's certainly something special, and I really love it. So I really highly recommend it, and it's just fantastic. It's just brilliant. Please do listen to this album if you're interested, because it is fantastic. This will probably be releasing pretty quick after Record Review 2, because this has just came out and I really wanted to review it quickly and get it published. I'll probably be releasing the next Record Reviews weekly schedule, I believe. So I'll have to record one for Friday as well. But I'll see you then. Bye bye.